Well, hello everyone. It is Sunday. It is the weekend, and so it's Weekend Winters. Hi, I am Kristi Winters. Hello, and you can see I have a guest this time. We've got
Hello.
fellow D&D and nerd, Lace Agar.
Aga.
Agar.
No, it's R. Go. It's first. It's first. It's first. It's the
I'm
first
from
bit.
Wisconsin. We always put the emphasis on the second syllable. Anyway, yeah, we're gonna talk some nerdy D&D stuff because this show, this time is just for me. I'm not thinking about like so much the audience, but I just want to get this topic out because it's one that I've thought about quite often, and I think it's kind of like important, actually, that there's no videos on this. So we're gonna get all kinds of D&D nerdy. If you don't like D&D, sorry, this week is just not gonna be for you. But come back next week when I will have D&D free content. But in the meantime, with Lace here, I thought since Lace has experience DMing, I wanted to use him a bit as a foil to discuss this new mechanic. Well, it's not really new. The book has been out for a couple of years, but I don't see any videos on Acquisitions Incorporated downtime activities. So in this video, we are going to look at just a little bit of an overview of downtime activities as a mechanic inside D&D 5e. Then we're going to talk a bit about sort of the ethics or the values or the way that it was structured and what kind of consequences it produced. Mostly individualism, I think, is a good way to say it. And then we're going to compare it with AC Inc., which is very much about collective group joint efforts in order for a party to be successful doing what they're doing. So yeah, let's go ahead and I'm going to ask Lace to maybe talk a little bit about the tradition of downtime activities in D&D.
So yes, generally speaking, there's two states to all D&D role-playing games. You're on the adventure or you're not on the adventure. How that generally works out is when you're on the adventure, you're obviously like plumbing the depths of nowhere and, you know, killing poor goblins as they kind of like run about their lives and all that stuff. But then between those adventures is generally when you're expected to have leveled up, to have, figured out like what you're doing with your life, these kind of things. And just because the people kind of had this thing of, yeah, well, you're saying that between one adventure and the next adventure, there's like a year of time. Do you mean that we've literally just sat there spending all of our money doing nothing with our day? And as a result, downtime activities came into existence. Originally, it used to be having a stronghold or a guild or anything like that, but as time's gone on, it's accreted more and more different like ideas and things like that. We can talk about the ins and outs of like the Dungeon Master's Guide. I don't generally bother with physical copies, so I'm just stealing Kristi's for these ones. Oh fuck yeah, got this. And in it you get such things as I can create magic items, which is fantastic. I can run a job. I can do this. I can do that. It's fantastic. It's very, very good. And I'm sure Kristi now has found a way to actually to talk a bit about how the DMG is actually quite different from AC Inc.
Yeah, so I actually have here, you can't see it, but I do have a whole list of the types of jobs you can do as downtime activities as listed in the DMG, the Dungeon Master's Guide. And you'll see that I'll read them off and you kind of get a flavor. A little bit of spontaneous, qualitative, textual analysis.
Aye.
Building a stronghold, carousing, crafting a magic device or item, gaining renown, performing a sacred rite, running a business, selling magic items, sowing rumors, training to gain in levels, and general structure. So I think there's some also stuff in Xanathar, but the structures of these downtime activities tend to be player focused. And so it's an individual player doing something, and that's not to say other people can't help, but the assumption of help is more optional as opposed to structurally built in.
Sometimes one of the issues that comes up, because this is an accreted action, it's not like constructed purely for it's not constructed from the ground up. Downtime activity literally occurred because like players were kind of like, so what are we doing with this time? It sometimes doesn't account for other people involving themselves because are you involving yourself at the expense of your own downtime activity? Are you doing it with them? Like, how's that working out? Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I'm going to move the chat over as well so y'all can see yourselves. And often, I've even heard of dungeon masters who sort of run one-on-one sessions with their players to do downtime activities because it's so focused on one person rather than it being about the group. And I mean, that's not a bad thing to do. It's quite time efficient, better than having people sit around, you know, a table for an hour and a half while one person does role playing and nobody else has a chance. But there wasn't like a natural go-to mechanism if you wanted to have your party do something together.
Mm-hmm.
You had ways to like have people collaborate on a single, like sewing rumors, everyone could join in, but there weren't necessarily great rewards for it and incentives to do it. And I think that's really the structural change that AC Inc. offers, and that hasn't really been discussed in any videos here on YouTube.
So, introducing the concept of Acquisitions Incorporated. Acquisitions Incorporated is an incorporated multidimensional business where people are adventurers. They go around, they get money, they do this, they do that. It's all pretty cool. You, as the conceit of the party, what the party is doing, is you are a franchise of Acquisitions Incorporated. You are a part who has freedom to act, and basically... Kristi's not going to like this, but it's basically like McDonald's. McDonald's gets all the money, but none of the culpability of, you know, the thing. Similarly, Acquisitions Incorporated kind of like doesn't worry so much about the loss of life as a result of...
I would disagree with that characterization of the way that the game is set up, because I played it. So, I mean, that might be your perception from the outside, but honestly, like, having rivals and having a bad reputation is certainly something that you could build on and make a plot point inside.
I was being entirely facetious. But in any case, so the downtime activities in this is, in role-playing terms, it's called constructivist thought. The developers of this have created the concept of franchising and then created things to enable franchising and to construct loads of different things. As a result, you can get the new things of what I can read from here. Exploration, franchise reconstruction, HQ modification, marketing, philanthropic enterprise, running a franchise, scrutineering, shady business practices, schmoozing, and team building. Notice the difference in, you know, like the linguistics and stuff. This is very internet speak, it's very fluffy. It's not a very generic idea. Schmoozing as opposed to, you know, rubbing shoulders or anything like that. But yet again, this is something that everybody can contribute to in order to construct and enable your franchise to flourish.
Yes. So the way that we talked about the franchise being the core of the rule book, the way that it works is really there are three parts. You get your headquarters, you get your franchise, you get your headquarters, and then you get all of these other things and company roles, basically. So the franchise, it can be a physical headquarters such as a tavern or a stronghold, but in order to keep the game mobile, it can also just be like a traveling caravan. And that means you can adapt the franchise notion to the kinds of campaign you're running. If you have one where people are moving around a lot within a certain area, you can organize it such that, you know, like they're able to take their headquarters with them. If you're located in one base area that you work out of, you can do that as well. So the benefit of having these physical things that are located or tied to your party is that as your party levels up, their headquarters level up. So you get, you know, nicer digs, you get more defensive structures in case you're attacked, you get better access to transportation. So there is an incentive for the party to want to advance in order to get the cooler things down the road for your franchise. And in addition, they reward you for taking company positions by giving you some special bonuses that not only transfer to like certain roles. I know in my game, our players oftentimes will use the rumor mill to talk to other major domos of different franchises to try to get information on the situation in a new town, right? But also in these downtime activities, you're able to take people's roles within the company or within the franchise or the guild, in my case, in order to increase the chances of success. Mm-hmm. So so then I think that company roles, the franchise, and then So
I think it's a good idea we talk about like the structure of the downtime activity.
Yeah, because they're a little bit different from in the other from the DMG.
Okay, from the DMG. So let's actually quickly go over what the DMG gives you.
That means Dungeon Master's Guide for
the uninitiated and the better in life. So generally speaking, it is a one-step prospect in the Dungeon Master's Guide. I did a stupid and closed the book when I shouldn't have, and as a result, I can't find the downtime activity page.
Oh, I'll look while you talk.
So it's one step. I say I want to make a magic item. I want to run I want to run a business, and the person says, "Okay." The game master says, "Okay, roll the die. Roll the die. You add your bonus. That's it. That's all there is to it." And there's a power to that. It's very simple, and it's a way of abstracting out all of the story and everything like that. And I'm naturally gravitating slowly off frame.
All right, I'll just make my...
Yeah, just. Oh, no. My shoulder's still in shock, Kristi. Okay, anyway, it doesn't matter. But in any case, it is very much that simple thing. You don't have to worry about it too much. It is very definitively an abstraction of shit we do outside of the adventure, and it enables that very, very simplistically. Franchising, however, is actually made up of 3 pieces. The German way, 3 pieces. Yeah. First thing is resources. What you do in order to achieve this. For instance, let's take one example of the very first one in the section, exploring terrain. The resources that you need is 200 gold pieces and about 1 work week, 5 days worth of work. Right? That's it. That's what you need in order to do this. The next thing is going to be the resolution of it, which is generally a die roll, plus any bonuses that apply, and this results in any kind of discoveries that you get. It could be nothing. It could be something. Who knows? The final section is actually going to be what's called it's called downtime activity complications. When that occurs, now the reason why I'm stopping and kind of like thinking about it is because the complications is where the game master adds in the spice to the chili, and really kind of like is able to decide, okay, it's not the business as usual. It's not just the 2 parts. And this is and as you can see, it can kind of be quite interesting and able to structure yourself in such a way as to be very, very kind of like wrong-footed sometimes by what you would generally consider to be, I'm just doing a normal franchise restructuring. But then, all of a sudden, oh no, a staff member becomes outraged by the changes and secretly begins to undermine the franchise. The characters must uncover the culprit and decide how to deal with them. Drama, guys! Fucking drama.
Yeah, and that's really the difference is they emphasize that downtime activities can be a source of development. So on page, I don't know what it is, 60-something of the Acquisitions Incorporated, which we've got a little bit of here for fair use. It says...
Any flip, guys. Use any flip. No pirates.
Because Acquisitions Incorporated is focused on franchise, downtime activity is typically a big part of the game. The adventure makes up 4 chapters. You don't have to worry about that because you can actually just not even run the adventure and just use the structure to spontaneously or customize interactions in your own adventure. And sets up downtime options between adventure episodes as a key component of the campaign. But an acting campaign offers even more robust options for characters who want to get things done outside of adventuring time, because the heroes of Acquisitions Incorporated staff have something that most adventurers don't, a well-paid and occasional paid staff. So there's also ways that you can use your interns to help you. But the bigger idea is that instead of just being a thing that you do, like, we're going to make a magic item and then we're going to get on with the campaign, let's maybe talk a little bit about the first one about exploring activities and look at some of the complications and how people could build that out.
All right.
As a tool for expanding your narrative.
All right, so generally speaking, it uses the very standard way of how role-playing game, how Dungeons & Dragons works, which is the higher the roll, the better the result. That's just very simplistic of it. The 2 major ones, which are fantastic bits of maybe foreshadowing, maybe creation of like a subquest or anything like that, are the major threat, the minor threat. You can kind of see it on the right hand. You can kind of see it on the right hand side of the board. So the major threat is a very, very big way of kind of saying something is directly going to fuck up the running of the franchise. A Dargon appears out of nowhere because I refuse to say dragon, or a war breaks out. Like, I think that's I like wars. I think that's going to be a good way of kind of like throwing the spice in. It says here that it increases the running costs of the monthly costs of the franchises, which is kind of a thing. You have a franchise, you have to make business work. Spreadsheets are kind of might be required. But also, it just includes the idea of, like, in this world now, there is just this thing that exists. It is there. And, well, it's in your way. So what do? Kill it.
Yeah. So they talk about complications here in your franchise or your downtime activities as story. They write that complications in rivals make excellent adventure seeds. Whenever a complication or rival draws the interest of the players, the DM, you can go ahead and make a note of it for future development. And then as the campaign progresses, the agenda of rivals changes over time, just as the characters' goals and agendas change as a result of their franchise success or their efforts to stave off failure. And I know in my own campaigns, my players, for instance, took one of my players took a particular disliking to some necromancers as a druid. And I sort of used that seed of resentment and an interest to build up a whole subplot involving were-rats and necromancers, and now I'm kind of like linking it out. And so having those natural opportunities within a narrative where some beef gets brought in, to then go back and go, oh yeah, there's a complication here with, let's say it's your philanthropic enterprise. This person that you remember from 3 months ago has been like spreading rumors that you're all going to embezzle the money and people won't give it to you now. And that just is a nice way to, you don't have to always plan out everything in advance. You can be improvisational and just build on rivalries that naturally occur as walking through the world.
No, and this is kind of a thing that you can add up in grand style of anime. If anybody knows anything about a thing called the standalone complex, it's very much the case. Loads of different disparate roles and just bits of garnish that you add in order to in order to make the players love your game, eventually coalesce together into a big plot that shakes the world onto its very core, and it mostly constitutes of, I don't know, like a goblin rebellion. No, goblins are already dead in this world. Kobold rebellions. Kobolds don't like the lack of benefits, so they're attacking dragons in the effort to get better benefits, and as a result, it's flooding the gold market and destroying it.
Could happen. All right, so yeah, let's look a little deep dive into these 3-part sections of how a downtime activity could be used in Acquisitions Incorporated to incorporate all of the players or way more of your party members into an activity, giving them some stake in it. And then also, if you're looking for some inspiration in the plot, how this mechanism with complications and rivals can help you build those tensions to drive the narrative forward.
So just for the sake of being a shady bastard, we're going to be doing shady business practices.
Okay, I can go ahead to that one.
Okay.
That's an S's. Yep.
Yes. So shady business practices is exactly what it sounds like. Doing a bit of corporate espionage in order to...
Kidnapping is such a harsh word.
No, it is. It is exactly a nice description of exactly what happened. I am being kidnapped, guys. Help me. But in any case,
but actually they do say this right here. Kidnap is such a harsh word. Like I'm just reading from the text on.
Oh shit! Yeah. All right. Yeah. I can dig it now. I dig it.
That's the other thing too, is that most D&D, they have like maybe little jokes here and there. The AC Inc. book is definitely written very much tongue-in-cheek. It's very self-aware, and is quite happy to make jokes like, you might engage. Kidnap is such a hard word. Members of a rival gang. So it's meant to be taken in that way. Funny.
Just on a side note, entirely apart from this, the act of reading this is actually a lot more enjoyable than most other like books. These like the Dungeon Master's Guide, the DMG. It reads a bit like like a road code book, of like figuring out whether or not a traffic light's any good. This one reads a bit more like somebody's talking to you, like the Wolf of Wall Street or something.
Yeah. Can I give an example really quickly? I'll just as an example of sort of the irreverence that the tone is written with throughout. So at about half of the book, maybe a little bit more, is the rules and the structures, guiding how to do it. But then the other half, I guess no, actually it's. So, maybe a little bit,
pages.
Right, is mostly adventure. But at the top bit of where it says, no players allowed, this is what it says. This part of the book is for the DM only. If you're planning to run through the adventure as a player, stop reading now. Unless you want to keep going, that is. Because, seriously, it's not like anyone's going to stop you. After all, information is power in an acquisitions campaign and in life. Maybe you have a bit of an inside track. Maybe you having a bit of an inside track is just what this adventure needs to make it really pop and to keep the DM from getting all, ooh, look at me, I'm the one with all the secrets. So that's just sort of, it's a very fun book to read as a DM compared to some of the more dry books.
I personally writhe against the concept of being told by something that I spent money on and by dint own that I can't read it. So yes. That's just me. That's just my contrarian nature. So anyway, back to the shady business practices of it all. As I said, 3 sections. First, resources. How are we going to get this shit done, right? And it just simply says you have 2 things, time and money, and that's what you put in. Time in this world is set in fragments of 5 days, which is called a work week. And as a result, you can kind of like say, you can very simplistically say like, okay, guys, you have 8 work weeks, which is 40 days. And rather than having to think, oh yeah, I'm going to spend 2 days doing this and 1 day doing that and 5 days and I've got 35 days left, you just say, okay, I am spending 3 work weeks on shady business practices. All right. The 50 gold is just like running costs and everything like that. By this point, you will be swimming in money. The next section, resolution, which is kind of what I was talking about before. Acquisitions Incorporated is generally very nice for it by just saying, okay, there is a skill check, roll your die, add your bonuses. And then there are modifiers that come into play. The reason I kind of chose like shady business practices is because each check that you roll in order for the shady business practice to work out, it gets a +1 if the character makes a check that has a background appropriate to the shady activity. So if you're a crook and you're stealing shit,
sleight
power,
of hand,
sleight of hand, and all that stuff, it works out.
If you're doing a persuasion, it's your charisma.
Just for the sake of some garnish and stuff, there is actually a different rule that they give for the +1 bonus, because the +1 bonus is present. It's just if you are specifically a part of the franchise taking up a position, this can be by being any of the, honestly, similarly tongue-in-cheek names of the things. There's like a lawmonger, a cultionist, the horde person. You get bonuses according to the different roles and the different resolutions and stuff. Now there's another bit, which is a fantastic piece, which is you can increase the bonus that you get up to a maximum of +10, which, by the way, you're rolling a d20, so that's half your roll, by increasing the amount of time you're putting in or the amount of money. So you can basically say, like, if you have a surfeit of time, you can increase the amount of time, number of work weeks you're spending. If you've got no time but lots of money, throw money at the problem. That's how everything works. And then it just kind of comes down to how the resolution comes through. Now, this is kind of like different, but it generally comes down to 2 different results, which is you roll in certain downtime activities, you roll once and the result of the roll is what matters. Or in shady business practices, you roll multiple times and the number of times you succeed that changes what the result is. And you can see it on the right-hand side of the screen, 0, 1, 2, 3. And it goes from whatever you just read whatever it is it would be. The 0 is you get found out and arrested and you have to pay a fine, which, big problems for anybody not.
So these are the number of successes?
Now, there is successes that you have to make on the different roles. So,
in total, that you do. Can I just stop that there before we go through to, again, point out the difference in the DMG? It's kind of like a one-shot thing, and you can't really manipulate the structure too much. There's sort of a limit to it. Whereas here, you can basically, like, if the party decides and people want to bring their resources together as a group, you're going to start off, if you can find each one doing something that will bring it up to a 10, right? So you can do those things to increase your chances for success a lot more, I think, than in the DMG.
Yeah. And this is kind of the point of what we're talking about. This is more of a some ideology for you people. It is some collectivist action. Some would say communal, but whatever you want to say about that. And it's just like, you just do as you do it at your speed, which I think is a very, very good way of doing it. It makes people feel a bit more confident. Let's say that you bring in multiple members of your party or some of your interns in order to get involved in this shady business practice. Let's say you're good at some of the intelligent, the thinky stuff. You're the brain box, but you're not very good at the whole stealing shit or picking locks. Well, you can roll for the intelligent stuff. The picking locks bit, Kristi, you got light fingers, you'll be fine. And finally, we got the complications.
Okay, we just run through. So, the benefits, really quick, just to say, sure. If you get 0 successes, you're arrested. So there is some risk and reward here, which actually, sometimes that can be fun. It can be a spontaneous way to diverge the plot a little bit. If you get 1 success, you basically borderline success, you get 50 GP in profits. You can also then, with 2 successes, be a moderate success with 100 GP in profits, plus you get a minor benefit, which we'll talk about. And then there's also the top one, which is it's a total success. You get 150 gold per rank in your franchise, and you get a major benefit based on this one. Not the major benefits we'll maybe talk a little bit more about, but once you roll that, though, as the DM, you can then roll for complications that the party don't know about. So you want to talk a bit about what they say on complications there.
Yeah, so it says in the rule of it, in the book itself, achieving 0 successes immediately generates a complication. But the DM might decide that any illicit enterprise runs the risk of unforeseen circumstances. So, yet again, as I said, complications are GM controlled. They're things that the game master, as the person running the system, decides on their own. And this allows people to kind of just decide, okay, so what kind of game do I want to play? If I want the game to be reasonably simple, complications don't exist. If you want to be a right dickhead about it, it doesn't matter what they roll, you roll complication. Yeah,
should we go over the example complications?
Yes.
So we go back and forth?
One franchise staff member is arrested in connection with the scheme and is set to be interrogated about all franchise activities.
Now, that one might include a rival, which rivals are a big part of the narrative, but in ACK, but I think their rivals are pretty important everywhere. I kind of like to think of rivals not as so much the big baddies, but as some petty person they know in their life who just doesn't like them. I like the idea of the rival who undermines them being the pettiest kind of low-level person that they don't have time to deal with, but is still annoying.
If you would give these people a name, would they be Karen?
Yes, they'd be they have a Karen rival somewhere in a town who just diss them or whatever. Okay, so number 2, if you roll on a d6, the characters or staff members meet a corrupt official or noble as a result of the scheme. This brash and flamboyant individual threatens to draw attention to any future shady enterprises. So that's, again, a nice way to introduce some narrative tension into your story, if you're looking for that, if you feel it's a little low on drama.
And as you can see about this, even though before, for the previous one result, it is kind of very solid in the sense of this person is no longer accessible to the party because they're in fucking prison, and they might be rumbling your thing. your enterprise. This one's a bit more airy-fairy. It could be a problem. It couldn't be a problem. Maybe you can turn it into a benefit. Who knows? Yeah. But anyway, moving on. Bringing up the rivals, as it said. A rival uncovers the shady scheme and threatens to expose it. And there's the lovely asterisk, which is, might involve a rival.
Mm-hmm.
Because, rivals being involved are not necessary when a rival is involved.
Yeah, you could have just like a local, narc, whatever, come along. Or you can attribute it to someone that is already in your story that has some tension with the party in order to raise that level of resentment and feeling of being undermined. So, gives them motivation to go kick some butt. Right. Next, and number 4 is a citizens group. Hears rumors about the franchise's involvement in the shady scheme and forms a watch organization to monitor your characters.
Now, I would just like to be abundantly clear that this is actually where I would be in the whole scheme of things. I am a fantastic god botherer, and I love to bits the idea of just fucking up some corporation's day.
Yeah, just like suddenly, you find like neighborhood people like watching you and sitting across the street, and yeah, it might be interesting to bring that into your story.
Okay, next one. An NPC who participates in the scheme tries to blackmail the franchise, asking for a payment or a favor to keep quiet. Yet again, not very solid. This is just a non-player character who just wants something from you that isn't part of the scheme in general. So if this is a heist movie, if this is Ocean's 11, this is Andy Garcia going, yeah, you want me to keep quiet? Pay up,
Yeah, and also, too, you don't have to have these events happen directly after the activity. Mm-hmm. In fact, it might be more interesting, like the party might be, let's say, doing some shady business practices because they want to do something in a town. And it goes off, and it, let's say it goes off without a hook. They make the money, whatever else. They're moving on with their lives. Suddenly, 4 sessions later, someone shows up going, oh, gosh, I got this information that this deal that you've been working on, it might have been bribery involved. And gosh, if only I could pay my rent this month of 150 gold pieces, I might forget this piece of paper that has a handwritten note from someone offering a bribe. That too is a way, like having players' characters come back and later on, I think is a real fun thing. And also, as a DM, as a DM, having those kind of seeds. I know one of my games, a player handed out a business card the day before they did a prison break. And the prison break went off without a hitch. It was fine. Like, they didn't get caught at all. But I wanted to raise the tension in that story with the character of Neverember, who's in Neverwinter. And so as a consequence, having that business card meant, because they gave it to a prison guard, I had a hook to tell them that they were wanted for interrogation back in Neverwinter. So being able to bring things back later that are consequences for your party members, I think, is just fun.
I also would like to say that Neverember is a bitch. And
I'm trying to monetize this content. He's a bee. Yes, agree.
It's a bish.
Bish. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, we're number 6, right?
Finally, this one is the one. This is I like this one. Okay, so just go right.
Oh, okay, yeah. A thieves' guild or other criminal organization takes an interest in the scheme. They order the franchise to run this activity every month and demand 10% of the cut. Is that? Oh, yeah, that's number 5. Oh, no.
Number 6?
That's number 6. It's just very long text. While the franchise does so, all checks for shady business practice activities are made with advantage.
Yeah.
This messes with your players, right?
Well, this is on an objective level, right? This is a very, very good thing, but it's a complication because you've got to spend, well, like I said, the resources needed to run it, is 2 work weeks. So by dint of, let's say, you kind of go, okay, for downtime activities, you have 10 work weeks. 2 of those work weeks don't exist anymore for the players to muck about with because they have to do this. Or at least, as long as they don't want the criminal organization, not breathing down the throat. So it can kind of make it becomes easier, but it also kind of like forces them to do something they might not necessarily want to do. Those 2 weeks could easily have been done for team building or restructuring the franchise or any number of other things that they might need to do. It ties them up and makes them feel like they're part of a corporate espionage world. Because who hasn't seen Suits, where somebody gets like conned into doing something for an extended period of time?
I think the nice thing about this is it really allows you to just sort of self-generate plot hooks.
Yeah.
You really, I mean, I'm currently running the campaign in the back, but I was sort of like, what am I going to do afterwards? To kind of keep what I'm going to do, to keep things moving. And I can see how just dropping in these downtime activities, reading through them carefully and thinking about the narrative implications as well as the mechanics means that you can very easily generate, an ongoing campaign plot hooks without that much effort, just responding to what happens with the rolls of the dice and what your characters decide, your player characters decide.
I got really nothing to add in because this is the kind of thing that is very much in keeping with the concept of franchising and corporate interaction. You're not going to get everybody who's just involved in yes, I will stop you from your dastardly scheme of robbing a bakery or something like that. It's, no, I want you to keep robbing the bakery. And you're going to keep doing it until I say so.
Yes, exactly. You're going to say, and now what do the party do, right? Because that's always like, what happens? How do they react? How do they solve this problem? And that is really exciting. So I feel sad that there aren't more YouTube videos that really explore the benefits. There's a lot of thought and love that went into this design. I feel like it hasn't quite got the love it deserved, and that's why I wanted to do this episode on it.
Yeah, something that there's two things I want to add in, right? The bit of history. So the complications and rivals concept came into existence, originally came onto our radar from the Unearthed Arcana, which is the playtest system that Dungeons and Dragons uses, right?
I think it might have been mentioned in Xanathar's 2, possibly. But
let's put it this way: I heard about the concept, the keyword complication, in 2019. So I don't know when the releases were, but the concept of complications and rivals and everything like that, I've heard about for years at this point. But when they released, they were kind of they didn't have the fittings of the franchise, the reason that you're team building and all these different things. As a result, it kind of felt uneven. It felt unfinished. Now it kind of all comes in together, and it is kind of finished, and it is very elegant is the word I would use to thing. Although I have the feeling that somebody would say something like it's all synergistic and conducive to good play. The other thing that I would also say is how remarkably easy it is to modify this stuff. Yes, it's in franchise system, and you could just as easily replace Acquisitions Incorporated with another word or another organization and just keep all the same trappings and all that. However, you can use a shady business practice divorced from everything else with some minor modification. And similarly, if you really want to play a more involved, shady business practice, all you have to do is extend the shady business practice success table. You can see that it already occurs. So when you fail, you get a 250 fine. But when you succeed with one, £50, 50 gold.
In profit.
2, 100. 3, 150. That easily means that 4 and 5 would be 200 and 250 easily. And it can go up and up and up as you go. So if you really want to go with we are level 20 badasses of the corporate world, well, all you need to do is just add down to 8 or something like that, and then you just multiply by 50.
The other thing that I like about this system is that it gives people whose player characters have no meaningful relationship a focus for unity, right? And I think especially a good way to do that is with rivals. If you join this company, you're okay, I'm going to sign up, I'm going to be part of this franchise for a little while. You might not be invested in the franchise per se. However, if your franchise now is suddenly being attacked by a rival company or guild or like you're going into a hostile territory where you're going to be attacked, and it can be a source of a reason for your players to feel unity about something besides just the plot line. Like they have this thing that they're part of and they're trying to protect. So I think that that's also a social aspect of it that the other downtime activities don't facilitate as well.
Yeah. A problem that can occur with downtime activity in the Dungeon Master's Guide is while it is uniform, while it is all insular and modular, and kind of like it's the means and the ends in itself, you can sometimes have this thing of like, okay, so how long does it actually take? What does it do? How long is a good amount of time to give a player party to be downtiming? Okay, a year. That sounds like a good idea. But how much does it take to make a magic item? Oh, 6 years? Well, fuck. Well, fluff. Yeah, and just as you said, like it unifies people using the rival terms, and the unifying theory of fluff that guy is a powerful idea.
Yeah, exactly. Like the having someone or some group in common that you really despise. It's a very unifying force.
Yeah, it's cathartic. It's cathartic, realizing that an Otiug is responsible for all your ills, and judicious action with a sword is, a good way of dealing with it.
So now with this sort of overview, I might do a couple of videos. I'll probably post them more on my D&D channel or to our Twitch channel, perhaps. Maybe I'll go put this up on there. But I want to kind of go through more of the each activity in the future to deep dive it. Because again, I've looked for videos on downtime activities in the Acquisitions Incorporated book on YouTube. 0, and I want to address that gap in the literature because I guess the system needs way more love, and it's gotten so far in a little bit of bigging up, to use a term from I think 2015. So, I think that's everything we wanted to do.
I think that's all. I do feel that philanthropic. I do feel a bit called out by the idea of philanthropic enterprises being entirely for good PR and not in order to be like a good end in itself. I feel seen and attacked.
Yeah, maybe if it's worth. Yeah, can we read that? We'll do paragraph by paragraph. I'll start out. Philanthropic enterprise. It can feel great to give to charity and help those in need. Pretending to care about others can also be a great way to earn favor with governments and nobility, gain tax write-offs, or win over customers. Head office might suggest, or even require, a franchise undertake this activity if it has recently gained negative publicity or even been discovered to engage in shady activities.
And right there, you can get what is known as emergent gameplay, as the party has recently burned down a section of the city they live in, or failed with a 0 of any of their shady business practices. Well, you can do one downtime activity in order to counteract the bad press of the other downtime activity, and thus, I guess, critique capitalism in some way, shape, or form, but whatever. Franchise members should select a philanthropic cause related to a nearby area, settlement, or a group of people. Example causes include such efforts as picking up trash from roads and forests.
I like the idea of doing skill checks as you pick up garbage on the side of the road. Roll perception to see, and then you find like a bunch of old feathers that someone threw out, some old boots.
I feel really annoyed that they didn't do such things as like kissing babies and saving.
Oh, you
cats from
could
trees.
probably.
No, they don't. They say improving schools and raising funds for victims of a recent disaster. The last one is an especially good idea if the disaster was caused by the franchise. Oh, it wasn't my fault. God. Okay, successes benefit the franchise by helping the selected cause, or at least giving the appearance of having done so. Failure might worsen both the underlying issue and the franchise's reputation.
Yes. So again, it's a nice way to build off of a shady business practice. Now you screwed it up, so you've got to do it. Yes. And again, that sort of integration just is more efficient for the DM to not have to come up with everything on their own.
Yes. It's your turn.
Yes. I think that's it. Oh, we
Oh.
want to just discuss. Okay, sure. So
No. Okay, so
It's
just
the
to add
resources.
just to add a little bit of thing about it. I was saying earlier, because shady business practice is just like, oh yeah, you get a +1 if it's appropriate. You can see kind of like the little gubbins of like modifiability in this. First thing, you get a +1 bonus to the check if you are a documenter or occultant position, which are positions within the franchise itself. So,
Although I would say that if you wanted to carry over this benefit without assigning company roles, what you could do is you could find something like the Documancer is probably like a link to intelligence. So if your most intelligent party member leads an activity, they get to add a +1.
Yeah.
Or similar.
So I agree with any of that. Another very, very simple way of doing it is just by simply instituting the same rules that are in other downtime activities, which is increase the amount of time you're doing it or increase the amount of money you're spending on it. Like, you do either of those, you get the +1. It's easy. Cool. Empower. There you go.
Yeah. So maybe in future we'll go more into, or I will go more into specific activities and really go through them and look at their potential. But just generally, this talk was meant to introduce the general concept and advocate for this alternative way of thinking about downtime activities based on what your campaign needs. And if it's the case that you like the idea of your party working collaboratively on something so that it's not downtime activities that's all sectioned off, then I would definitely recommend that you look into this book and think about how you could incorporate this group downtime activities into your campaign, not only to get things done, but sometimes to cause more plot hooks and advance the narrative and put your characters or your players in new situations that maybe they haven't experienced in other games.
Yeah. And I think that that's perfectly correct, and everything that she said is what I thought.
All right. Well, wonderful. All right, that's it. We're done. We're done 15 minutes on nerdy D&D stuff. Thank y'all for stopping by. It's not the necromancer's fault, it's the pyromancer's fault, says Sib in the chat. So thank you for allowing me to geek out. Thank you to Lace for being willing to get dragged onto camera for this. And
I don't like being on camera. It means I have to dress up and my makeup is all smudged and it's awful.
Anyway, next week I will be back with nerdy political content as per usual. But if you are interested in watching us nerd out more, you can go over to the Rolling Left channel on Twitch. We just put up an episode. We went live last night. That will be going up on my D&D with Kristi channel. Probably by Wednesday, I think, is when I've been sort of premiering the Twitch episode from the prior week, but edited down without the breaks and whatnot in between. So yeah, until next week, Sunday, I've been Kristi. Lace has been awesome. You've been awesome. I sometimes I'm awesome. And until next time, have a great Sunday, wherever it is, whenever it is you are. So goodbye from Lace.
And goodbye from Lace.
And goodbye from me.
And goodbye from her.
Catch y'all later. Bye.
Bye. There we are.
Yeah.
I apologize for swearing.